All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order on 7/17 in our administrative boardroom. We did have a need of executive session before. And I think that's,
Regarding personnel
eh,
and student.
was there another one we have to include? No.
Two students and personnel.
Yeah, two students, one personnel. So other than that, yeah, at the end of the last meeting, right? We have to cover that too. That's what I'm thinking of. So we did have a need to discuss personnel matters at the end of our last meeting. And for those who viewed at home and didn't see the end, we just made a motion to recess when we came back in, or motion to adjourn after our recess. That's anything happened, if you missed it. And with that, pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mummer, could you take roll call, please?
Mrs. Bauer.
Here.
Mr. Beard.
Here.
Mrs. Brennan.
Here.
Mr. Galazella.
Here.
Mr. Gelsinger.
Here.
Mr. Leidy.
Here.
Mr. Plessick.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Weaver.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have a fair half room full today. I believe we have a presentation for a press box mural on our agenda. So I guess I'll prompt Dr. Field to lead us on that.
Yes, I believe I'm calling up Mrs. Lawhead.
Yep.
And how's my presentation? I will keep it very short. So I'm here on behalf of the class of 2025 and kind of the class of 2024. So I'm one of the advisors for the class of 2025. And for their class gift, they want to donate a mural on the side of the press box. And if we go through, you'll see where it's at. So it'll be on that side of the press box facing the tennis courts. So what people see when they drive down Bowman Road. Bob Glover, if you know him, was a former art teacher here who retired. He has volunteered to, he did the design, volunteered to do all of the work. So his design that he came up with is that. And then if you go to the next slide, and Ken, so that's what it'll look like. It'll be the entire side of the press box. What we really liked, we met with our class officers. We met with Mr. Glover and the class officers. Everybody unanimously agreed on this. What they really like is the thick black stripe at the bottom. The plan is to put something, I don't know the technical terms because that's not my realm of expertise, but to hang banners over that. So in October, like hang a pink banner over it for breast cancer awareness. In April for autism. In they said graduation, maybe white, and have all the seniors sign it. Just something that can be interchangeable for whatever's happening at the time. Go ahead. So that's what we've determined that it stands for. The class officers in conjunction with Bob Glover. Go ahead. So the home of the Mustangs, it would communicate who we are, the mindset, and then the fact that it's looking forward. He likes the confident forward movement. Black and white to stick with the original school colors. Again, just more, Bob had this, it was a 49 slide presentation when he met with us. So I really took it way down from that. He's ready to jump on it and move now to have it ready for the first home football game or first home contest. Like he's already been out here at night with a projector, looking how he can trace it and the right hours that he needs to have it. So if you go to the next slide, instead of painting who donated, it would be a plaque that would go on that lower left side. And then here's where the fees come into play, all covered, nothing by the district, all donated from the classes of 24 and 25. So it's $175 for the Mustang because he took that from something else. However, once we have paid the $175, go ahead, we own it and have all the licensing, royalty and free images, and we can use it for other things as well within the district. So that's just the technical terms there. So he, of course, being artistic, did all these things. That is not me. Go ahead. He said it'd take about 1 to 2 gallons of white, gray, black paint. So he's estimating that to be somewhere between $210 and $420. Here's where the kind of bigger cost comes into play. So we'll have to pay to rent a lift from Finch Rental for him in order to get to the top and all that good stuff. But he looked it up. He's done all of the work on it. So for about a week, it would be about $700. He thinks he can do this in a week. Okay, so a week. He will supply all of that stuff. I know when I talked to Dr. Burkhart, 12-foot step ladder, I guess he used when he did the other side of the press box. Dr. Burkhart said that the school can loan him that as well. And then again, he says 5 to 10 days. His fee for painting will not exceed more than $5,000. So if you go to the next slide, total fees will come in somewhere between $2,700 and $5,400. So the class of 24 donated $2,000. The class of 25 will pay for the rest of it. And that's it.
May I ask for a point of information? Are there any liability concerns with the heat, the height?
This is the first I'm hearing of it. So, I mean, I would imagine he would have a contract or something that, because
So he did the whole other side of the press box. Was
Yeah.
that last year, I think? And that was for the Alumni Association.
what do you think?
That was at the same time of year too.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I could look into it, but I don't know. This is the first I've heard of it. I don't know if he's willing to do it and
Yeah.
you
And it's
know,
not the first one he's done.
right.
So
I don't know.
So a
anything
waiver
else?
of liability, maybe, is that in order?
Yeah, a waiver of liability is fine, that he would do the work and without regard, I guess I could look and determine sort of a consultant, contractual worker, waiver of liability, and could look into that. Yeah.
So my only concern is recently we've had a presentation about uniting under one image of the Mustang. I love this image, but it's not going to work for probably all of our stuff. So I guess that would be my only concern, is that if we would have that revisited, that we would come under a specific image, that we would get, what's it called? A royalty or something that, then this one wouldn't really match it. But I love the image that it currently is. So I don't know if that would hold me back, but just a concern, I guess.
Has this been coordinated with Mr. Osborne as far as the remodeling of the press box? Because that was just during a recent board meeting as well. I know the last time that they started to do that, it was an issue because they were gonna damage the other mural. And that's one of the reasons they came back in and repainted it, because it was actually gonna damage that mural. Otherwise, it would have been gone.
I mean, I know Mr. Osborne knows about it. You can probably speak more.
Yeah, excuse me. I think we're in good shape as far as, if the board so chooses to give Bob the go-ahead to do this. We did our overall painting and cleaning just recently. The district has a good base coat on it. Now is actually a good time to do it. Our biggest concern when I was first approached about it was that he has the proper equipment, can do it in a safe manner, hence the scissors lift. So, that's kind of what we asked for the last time, and, he complied, and I think it worked well for him. I think he appreciates it was said and done, and I think it's the smart way to go again, because it's a safe, solid way to get it done.
Nate, just since you're up here, in the quote, there were two price structures. One was based off of the idea of potentially donating a lift that we already have. I know when we toured the high school, obviously we saw that they were being used for the renovations. Would it be possible to allow him to utilize one of our lifts, or will they need to look into renting one of the lifts?
So is my recommendation that they rent a lift.
Okay.
The district owns one lift. We do have one, but that's the lift that we take into our buildings, work on top of gym floors, do gym ceilings, gym lights. We do our best to keep that machine clean, not get stones and debris embedded in the rubber tires so that it doesn't mark our gym floors. It just causes me concern to take that lift and commit it to being outside
Yep, that makes sense.
and exposed to the weather and exposed to those type dynamics. For the cost of the lift, I think it's worthwhile to rent one.
So the only question I had for you, Nate, was, so the paint, we repainted because I guess our paint wore out. So do you have a recommendation for the type of paint used? My concern is it peeling off in a year. Do we consult on the type of paint?
So I'm not the painter. I'm not the guy to really make a recommendation on the paint. If I was pushed for it, I'd say, let me call Sherman-Williams and ask them. But
Okay.
I will share that Bob painted the first mural from 20 years ago or whatever.
Okay.
That one lasted that long. He's painted the next one. He's had good success.
Okay.
In my mind, he's proven
He
his
knows what he's doing.
expertise in it. Yeah, he knows
Yeah.
more about the paint than I do.
That
'Cause
alleviates my concerns then. Okay. Anyone else? I appreciate the presentation.
So obviously it's listed on the agenda as a presentation. It's not up for any kind of.
It is, there's
Is
an
it
action
somewhere
item.
on the
Yep.
agenda?
On the agenda for vote.
Awesome.
So 10D2.
All right. Barring any other discussion on that, we'll move on to additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda. Anyone have any? None? Okay. Hearings of persons who wish to address the board. I have 4 names here. Let me see, that's after and observer. So I have 2. Mr. Ed Gross.
Good evening. Good to see you all. I just want to say I love the Mustang, by the way. I'm an artist, so it really looks nice. Love it. I want to take a moment to encourage you guys. I know last month was a probably hard month for a lot of you guys. I heard there was a lot of missed sleep. So on behalf of the school district, people that live here, we just want to say thank you for the hard work, for the dedication to carry the weight that you guys carry so well. I know it's not easy, and we're thankful for it. So I'd like to use the remainder of my time to pray over you guys for the agenda. So if you're willing, pray with me. Father God, we just praise you. Thank you for this evening. God, thank you for this board that cares so much for the kids, for the teachers. Thank you for the teachers that care so much for the kids. And thank you for the kids, God, for your blessings over them, for keeping them safe, for providing such great education and leadership and guidance for them, Father. We just thank you for that. And I do pray for this board, God. I pray that you would grant them wisdom, help them to discern your will, give them courage, God, to carry it out. I pray for grace tonight, God, as different worldviews collide, Father, it can get hard. And so I just pray that there would be a tremendous amount of grace all around, that your blessing would abound and that your will would be fulfilled. God, we love you. Jesus, we love you and we trust you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
And Ms. Bunty?
Yeah, I want to pray. Dear Jesus, you are the great God, the great King above all gods. Thank you for the freedom in America. May our school board members and administration do what is right before you. We have a right to stand against evil. May we, Lord, be on fire for you. We will stand in the light and not the darkness. Protect us, O Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, and that's it for sign-in. Anyone else wish to speak on the agenda at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Action on minutes. Anyone have any concerns on minutes? Seeing none. Number 10, we'll go on to Mr. Smith, personnel.
Okay, we have several groups here, so
Oh, yeah, take it.
first I'm making a motion to approve agendas 10A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's the first group.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Plessick. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Kirby.
So my first question is numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5. The creation of new full-time emotional support, autistic support. There's actually 3 autistic support and 1 emotional support. Are these part of the LIU take back, or are these entirely new positions? And were these positions part of the budget?
Initially discussed 10 PCAs. Is that what you're asking? We originally talked about adding him in. Is that part of it?
We thought it would be 7 because they would come in over the
Right.
year. But yeah, that's my question is, these 4 positions, are they part of the LIU take back?
Mr. Farmer, do you want me to answer?
Budgeted.
Do you want to answer?
I don't know the answer.
Okay, so I believe that some of them are part part of the LIU and some are not. But perhaps Mrs. Cortina can clarify some of that if she doesn't mind coming up to the mic.
Thank you, Ms. Cortina.
So the ES position is a new position for a student that's in the classroom, so that would be number 2. But the other ones were part of the plan, and they're just basically listed now. So we went through it with the plan, and these are then the positions that are listed to fulfill that plan so that we can go ahead and hire the staff.
So only number 2 is a new one that was not previously planned for.
Correct.
And
Correct. Based upon the needs of a student.
So that would
Yeah,
bring us,
PCAs are individuals, so.
budgeted, we
yeah.
had 10, 7? 7. So this would make
And
it
that's
8.
it's completely
They're separate.
different than the AS proposal.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mummer may be able to speak to this too, but one of the challenges in our special education budgeting process is the flexibility we need to offer because of when the needs come up and the changes come up. So I do believe it's accounted for in the budgeting process. And I think maybe that's Mr. Beard, kind of to what your question was about.
Okay. I have a couple other questions, probably just because I don't know. An LIU guest teacher. Like,
Yep.
What is that?
Sure. So actually, if we look at all of those classifications of substitute teachers, all professional staff have to have a certificate to teach. We have to have certificates. And substitute teachers, there are multiple ways they can get to the classroom. One of them is the LIU guest teacher. So the LIU actually runs a program where they can go through it and they can get a certificate to teach. Those teachers listed there have gone that route. The emergency permit teachers are those teachers who have a bachelor's degree. Maybe they have been interested in it, but they've just needed an emergency cert that they've gone directly through the district to apply for. So that's that group. And the PD prospective teacher substitutes, that is new, an act that is new. Those are specifically teachers who are currently enrolled in a program to become teachers. They just haven't finished yet. So there's like this whole other emergency cert. They're all kind of designed so that we can get more people in the classroom to serve as substitute teachers.
Okay, and the LIU guest teachers, are they actually LIU employees or they're?
No, they are our employees. They
Okay.
just go the route of the LIU to get their emergency cert.
Okay.
It's really a cost that they incur, that they
Okay.
incur as a sub to
Okay.
do that.
So it's really just a very long list of substitutes.
Yes,
That come
Right.
to us in different manners.
we're just breaking them down as to how they're certified so that we have the record for that.
Okay.
Kirby, when you were asking about the LIU guest teachers, when I substituted for Hanover and Southwestern many, many years ago, I went through the LIU and what they did was you can go be substitute guest teachers they work with several different, so you're not really only connected to the one district, you can go to many, so if that helps.
Okay. I think that's all of my questions.
Matt, I had a question.
Yes. Ms.
In
Weaver.
reference to, I lost the number, I'm sorry.
I did 2. Are we up to, we only went down to 5 or did we go past
He
that?
went to 10.
I went to 10.
Okay.
Yes, he went to 10. And it was actually number 10, the recommendation to approve the job description for the Director of Pupil Services. In the job description for that new created position, if I'm understanding correctly,
Mhm.
that position will run next to is the title going to be Director of Special Education, Supervisor of Special, what did we decide that?
So that is going to come at the next meeting, the change to that job description for it's right now the Supervisor of Special Ed. The recommendation will be the Director of Special Ed.
Okay,
That will happen at a next meeting.
okay,
But you are right. I think your question is, will they be parallel?
right,
The recommendation is that both the Director of Pupil Services and the Supervisor or the Director of Special Ed will report to me as the Assistant Superintendent. So they will not have supervisory responsibilities over each other. They'll both be under me.
okay. I think my only hesitation to putting this through, it's very, very well written, but without having its complement. Because the goal was to take one position, split it into 2, and have the 2 positions fulfill the goals that one position used to cover. Not knowing the complement and not having that in front of us, I'm not worried because I know you do your job well, but I'd like to see the symbiotic nature to those
Okay.
two roles running next to each other before we sign off on either of them.
And that's fair. Can I speak to it a little bit?
Absolutely.
Maybe I can speak to the difference is the Director of Pupil Services and Dr. Smale and Mrs. Cortina and I have met a couple of times to really work through this. The Director of Pupil Services will do what Pupil Services is intended to do, looking at all areas of pupil services. But the special education role that Dr. Hom and Mrs. Cortina were initially going to split, those responsibilities are going to go into the Director of Special Ed, and the Pupil Services will be the everything, all those other pieces to it. And as you'll note, even in that job description, things like safety, the district safety coordinator, things like all of the nurses, counselors, psychologists, mental health services, that will all be under pupil services. So it's very compartmentalized in that way. And then the special education will be in the other position.
Okay,
If that helps you.
it does. Thank you.
I would say the attachment that we saw for Director of Pupil Services, as I recall, it also included supervision of school psychologists.
That is correct.
Is that solely under pupil services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, there's obviously a lot of parallel between, because obviously special education relies so much on the role and function of psychologists. But from a supervision standpoint, it would be under pupil services.
Okay. Okay. Address your concern?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I had an additional question. So letter H, support substitutes, and that's broken out by, that starts on about page 15. Clerical and paraeducator, a nurse and health room assistant, custodial and maintenance, transportation. I'm very much familiar with substitute teachers.
Yep.
Maybe this is my own ignorance, but if a clerical person or a paraeducator is out for a day, we bring in a substitute,
Yes, that is correct.
and the same for a nurse and health room, even custodial and maintenance.
Right. Yes, because the work responsibilities don't end when somebody's out. So we still want to offer the work to be completed by a qualified substitute teacher or substitute coming in. So that is correct. They aren't always filled. We don't always have a good fill rate for every position that's offered, but we do intend and desire to have a substitute come in to do the work when somebody's absent.
Okay, that's just a bit of a surprise to me, especially if for short periods of time that, frankly, much would get accomplished with a substitute who's not familiar with day-to-day operations and what happened yesterday, and
Right.
what happened last week, and what's happening next.
So I do know, and
Substitute teaching is
yeah,
difficult.
I do also know that in our system, we do rely on our substitutes when we hire in like a food service substitute, or we hire in a maintenance or custodial substitute. That is the pool we draw from for positions when they become open. So it's a very good, one thing about it, like a pipeline. It's a good pipeline approach, really, of trying to get people in, letting them come in, sort of non-committal to work every single day. But we obviously have need. We have need for people as substitutes to come in and offer to do the work when people are not able to do their job. So I think it's a good approach. It's my opinion. I think it's a good approach on that sense.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I did have one question on I under community swim. I just want to reiterate this. I asked this before. We have one supervisor for 28.25 an hour and 7 substitutes at 28 an hour for community swim, which is, we've already established, has relatively low participation. Just to reiterate, that substitute supervisor is not getting paid at the same time the supervisor is. That's only a fill-in per hour, correct?
I believe so. I don't know my detail on that one as well, though, Mr. Galazella, but I wonder if somebody, Mr. Mummer, will help me out on that one.
Yes, that's correct. It's when they fill in.
Okay.
All substitute rates are 25 cents an hour below the starting rate for that
Okay.
position, for any positions, for support staff.
Okay, I just need that clarification. Thank you. Anyone else on any other parts of 1 through 10? All right, seeing no further discussion, Mr. Mummer, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Abstain. My daughter's on the list.
Mr. Smith.
So,
Yes.
wait, can I pause this there? Can we just do an abstention to H then and allow you to vote on the rest? I believe that's what the solicitor's advising me we can do.
Okay.
So abstain on
I'm abstaining for H, item H.
3H, I think it is, right? Yes, 3H, and then
And I'm a yes to
the
rest.
remainder. Okay.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
I am abstaining from B and a yes for everything else.
Okay,
Mr. Galzella.
yes.
9 yes, 0 no, or 8 yes, 1 abstention, depending on which one it is.
For the minutes in the future, Mr. Mummer, is it better to separate that out individually? Is that matter for you?
It'll appear that way in the minutes. It'll be fine.
Okay, okay.
All right, I broke these next ones out separately so that Dr. Field can give a summary as we go through each one. So my next is a recommendation to approve 10A11. It's a recommendation to approve Dr. Jeffrey Smale as Director of People Services, effective on July 18th, 2024.
Second.
Recommendation by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Leidy. Any comment?
I'll give Dr. Friel a moment to comment here.
Yes, so I'm glad we approved number 10 because that makes number 11 a little easier to approve. Very excited about that. Dr. Smale, of course, as we know, has been the principal at EHMMS for many years. He was principal of Bearsville before that. He has a nice, long, qualified administrative track record for many years, and we're very pleased for him to come into this role. I'm happy to work with him and with Mrs. Cortina as well in these roles. I know when you give him a microphone, he always does like to talk. So I don't know if he wants to say anything at this point about this approval, but I suppose he would be happy to do so.
You might want to wait till the end of the vote first.
Oh, maybe we should vote. All right. Yes, thank you. I didn't know if that was going to sway the vote.
If you wanna-
So,
If you want to plead your case, now is the time.
Yeah, on that note, I'd just like to say, I very much support this, and Dr. Smale has done an excellent job administratively. I think he's one of the paragons of our education here at Southwest, and I'm very happy to put him in whatever career goals he wants to assume here. So,
I think it was pretty well understood that we were hesitant to remove him from the middle school, but excited to give him additional responsibilities in our district.
okay, seeing no further comment, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
On that note, I'd like to open up the microphone to Dr. Smale.
The new director of people services.
Yes, the new Director of People Services. Thank you, Ms. Weaver.
I just want to say, and I will be brief, I appreciate this opportunity. I will be perfectly honest, it is a little bittersweet for me. I do have mixed emotions as I am very proud of what we've been able to accomplish at the middle school and very proud to represent what I think is a terrific staff at the middle school. I do, as I kind of weighed the pros and cons and went back and forth, I do think perhaps my institutional knowledge of being in the district for 15 years can help and continue to help and support our staff and our students in a different role, of course, but you know, I'm looking forward to it, and I thank you for your confidence in having this opportunity. I look forward to continuing to support the district, and I'm really happy to be a Mustang. I'll be perfectly honest, I would not have left the middle school for any other district or any other position in any other district, so I'm very pleased to remain a Mustang, so thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, on that note, Mr. Smith.
My next motion is a recommendation to approve 10A12, and that is to approve Wesley Winters as the principal of EHMMS starting July 18th.
Second.
Beat me to it. All right, motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Bauer. Any discussion?
Similarly, this was another one where we were going to be sad to remove him from the high school, and I think we worry about filling his shoes. But very excited to see what he can do in the middle school, so.
Ms. Brennan?
To add on to Justin, Mr. Lighty, I was not wanting to let you go to the middle school, but if anyone would be the candidate to go there, it would be you, so.
I think a lot of the staff are gonna miss you. That's the word that I've heard, so we've definitely received several threats whenever we approve this. But I think it is the best thing for the school district.
In fairness, I wasn't really sure if Mr. Winters would be willing to because he did get a tattoo in response to some things going on at the high school. But it is a district tattoo, so I was confident that, yeah, that's good. So we're very pleased. I'm pleased to continue to work with Mr. Winters in his role as the principal of the middle school pending this vote. We'll see how it goes.
I would like to add in, your temporary fill-in during your time at the high school made this even more easy of a decision because we've already seen how you perform as a principal. That trial run showed us, how you're going to excel as a principal, and it made this very easy. Very excited to see you there. I would like to add, you seem to me to be a big kid at heart, so maybe the middle school might be a good fit for you as well. So, very happy to see you there. All right, without any other comment, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
I'll first start off by saying what Dr. Schmale said. I wouldn't have left this district, for a principal spot anywhere else. So I'm very grateful and appreciative for the confidence that the school board and Dr. Burkhart and Dr. Friel have in me for this position. I'm very excited to get started. Very excited. I've heard amazing things about the middle school staff. So I'm excited to, work alongside them and lead them for what's best for our students. And I'm ready to get rolling, meet the kids and, the families, but it is only July 17th. So, we'll slow it down and we'll get through the rest of July and partway through August. So hopefully it doesn't go too quick, but I do appreciate it. I just want to say thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, my last one here is recommendation to approve 10A13, Jennifer Kimmel as Student Support and Social Services Coordinator.
Second.
Motion by Smith, second by Lady. Any discussion?
Any comment, Dr. Friel? This was a social worker position?
Right, this is Mrs. Becca Cooper's resignation. This is the response. We had a nice process. Mrs. Cortina and I really were able to work through that and lead that pretty well. We were very pleased with the candidates that came forward, but we were very excited about this particular one coming forward. I think we think she'll do a nice job.
Okay. Thank you to both of you for working so quickly to fill that spot. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
We don't need to vote on resignation.
Uh,
Oh, we
No,
do.
Nope.
no, we'll acknowledge them.
Yeah, acknowledge them.
Okay, we'll acknowledge the 3 resignations on here. One was a school psychologist, one was a part-time paraeducator, and one was a custodian at Manheim.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on in the agenda, we're on to 10B, Finance. Ms. Bauer.
All right, so I'm going to start with 10B, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Smith. Discussion?
So 10B1 is the approval of capital reserve fund budget. 2 is approval of the 24-25 food service budget. 3 is recommendation to approve the school lunch, breakfast, and lunch pricing. 4 is recommendation to adopt the resolution approved for disposal of the 2016 to 2017 financial records. And then 5 is approval of a contract for SWOPS training systems for the football team.
So I just had one question on 5 for the SWOPS training in their contract. They require a certain insurance level. Is that a level that we're already at, or are we
Yes,
taking out any additional for that?
they have to provide to us. It's not us to them.
Oh, okay, all right, very good.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment generally. So in looking at the budget that was put forth at our last meeting, we are ahead of our anticipated budget, and that is a great place to be. I think a large part of that came from federal subsidies that were higher than anticipated. So in that light, I would just ask the board generally, do we feel $2.85 for a school lunch is the cheapest you're going to get anywhere for a school lunch? Considering that if we hadn't gotten the federal subsidies come in the way they do, I think we would be looking at a budget shortfall. If, correct me if I'm wrong there, Mr. Mummert, is that right? Without the federal subsidy increase, I believe there would have been a budgetary shortfall, right?
I don't have that answer.
Okay.
Doug Furman is one of
And
the.
just what I recall from the numbers, I believe that. I'm sorry, can you take the mic, Crystal? I appreciate it. Sorry to pull you up.
Every year, the LIU puts together pricing amongst all the districts. Some of the districts are only at $2 and $2.10 for a lunch. Some are up to I think $4.20 is the highest. That wasn't even really around us. So we get the averages from everybody, and the $2.85 and the $3.10 for the lunches was just in coordinates with that paid lunch equity tool that we have to do for the government.
So what would put us in the we're charging a lot category? What would be that? Did you look at that? Like, what's the highest? And I'm not asking it at the top of your head. I don't expect to know that.
Well, it's
But
up on my desk in my pin board. I want to say 410 was the highest.
Okay.
But it wasn't like locally right here within the local district.
I got you.
I want to say you said it was something like 385 was one of the ones that was closer to us. That was
I
on the
did
higher
bring
end.
my stuff
Oh, you
from
did?
2 times
Excellent.
ago.
Thank you for coming prepared. That's great.
It was Columbia School District. They were at $5.
Okay.
And then Dover, we don't have, nobody else is higher than that.
Okay.
Breakfast, the highest was $3.50, and that was Cocalico School District.
Okay.
Both of those are in Lancaster County.
Right.
Yes, correct.
So I just wanted to put it out there generally. I get that if we increase our lunch prices, then less people may buy lunches. So
It's
there's
a balancing between participation and the money.
Right.
And we don't have that magic crystal ball. Jeff and I
Right.
talked about that before to know yes or no if they will or won't purchase.
Okay. So I'm just putting out there generally, I see a move to $3 for a lunch from 285 is not that incredibly differential, and I don't think we would lose a whole lot of purchasers. And that might impact our bottom line more positively. So I'm just going to put that out there to the board for consideration.
What are you saying? Why are you going from 285 to 3?
The elementary school lunch would be 285 to $3.
Yeah, but it's only an increase of 10 cents over last year.
So that would be 25
For the
cents.
elementary school, adding that as well to the 3.
Right, and the intermediate and high school, it would be an additional.
I imagine that's
20
because
cents.
the lunches are much smaller.
It doesn't matter the cost. The component chart that I gave you last week is no matter if we charge $20 a meal or $2 a meal, the component sizes is set by the USDA. We have no choice. We can't go and give them 20 chicken nuggets if we charge them $20. We can only, like, elementary is 4 for K1 and 2. It's 5 for 3, 4, and 5. And then I think it's 6 here at the middle school and high school. So we couldn't give more for more costs.
Right, but I'm saying you're giving less for an elementary school lunch, which is why
Correct.
there's a reduced cost.
Correct. Yeah. their
Right,
portion
and so,
is-
so I'm not saying we'd bring elementary up to the cost of the other ones. I'd say we'd add that 15 cents to elementary, intermediate, high school across the board just to, and the only reason I'm suggesting that is because, again, without the federal subsidy increasing this year, we would have seen a shortfall. And so I'm suggesting maybe we bump a little bit. That's not too much of a heavy lift for those that are buying. And it still puts our purchase price for any of our lunches well below anything you would find anywhere else. So that's kind of why I'm suggesting we talk about possibly doing that if the board so agrees.
So Matt, you're suggesting for next year, elementary lunch should be $3, intermediate and high school lunch should be $3.25?
Right. I think that would put us closer to that budgetary shortfall we wouldn't have seen if the federal subsidy hadn't increased.
Well, I share your concerns about budget, and it's not just in the food service arena. You know, there's a lot of things that no one in this district has control over. We don't control the cost of diesel fuel. We don't control the cost of, what it costs to buy a school bus. But when this board does have choices to make, like for instance, high security locks on bathroom stalls, raised roofs in the high school cafeteria, those are just two that come to mind. When we do have choices we can make, I would recommend that we be a little more careful and judicious about it. Otherwise, we're going to have some very uncomfortable tax increases in the future years. So I'm completely impressed with everything that you briefed a couple of weeks ago about all the things that you're doing to provide meals to everyone, to search for opportunities for discount food from federal sources, the fresh fruits and vegetables, everything that you and your staff are doing to use the resources you have to try to make a better meal. Completely impressed. I would support a slightly higher lunch cost.
Now, I do realize this is coming out of left field, and I apologize for not reaching out to you sooner that was just time constraints, to be perfectly honest. So if you're comfortable, how do you feel that would impact your overall bottom line and your operations in a positive way, negative way, willing to entertain your experience?
I've never been part of a district, and I've only had 2 that has gone more than the paid lunch equity tool of 10 cents. So I probably couldn't answer that best.
Okay.
But what I would advise the board is if we go up too much and participation drops, then that means the meal choices at the middle school and high school are going to have to be pulled back, and that's going to have staff layoffs because we can't serve the same amount of options with less participation.
Okay.
That would be my concern.
Okay, it's a good
So-
consideration.
So I was going to say, similar to what she said, I would hesitate to raise it 25 cents, although it doesn't seem like a lot, it's 25 cents. But if you look at all the other years, well, I guess the last 3 years, it's only been 10 cents. And judging by what financial constraints most, maybe not all, families have at this current societal time, with the way the economy is, and just overall what families are going through. And I know that 25 cents does not seem like a lot, and it isn't for most, but it can when you start to add it up and have multiple kids in the schools. And that's a big jump from 10 cents to 25 cents in totality. it can add up to a lot for kids and families. So I'm hesitant to jump that quick or that much that quick.
I have a few points of information I need some clarification on. So if there was determination, majority, that an increase were to arise, are you proposing procedurally that the budget proposal be voted down? If so, my counter question to you is, how does that adversely affect your process and what you're required to do procedurally, particularly with the government?
Every day Jade asks when we're gonna get numbers, so we can put it into our information, not like the handbook, but federal forms and PDE forms that we have to have submitted before we can even start serving school. So the longer we wait, just backs it up.
So to your point, so if we were to resolve to change the pricing today, you wouldn't have to resubmit anything.
You will not be able to vote on adult lunches or adult breakfast because I'd have to go back and redo the paid lunch equity tool to see there's a formula that we have to put it into what we have to charge for an
Okay.
adult, and that would have to be approved by PDE as well before we start school.
So point of clarification, that means that you'd be pushed back at least 2-3 weeks.
For
we'll
your
have a
next board
meeting
meeting.
For next 4 weeks.
How about this? What if we went with the 285 and the 310 now, and we changed the prices to 3 and 325, starting in January?
Yeah, but don't we have to publish those numbers to the public before we vote on them? I mean, how about we vote on it the way it's at now and see where it lies?
Yeah.
And then we see if we even need to consider any of this stuff. Because right now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're within your budget, these
Yep.
prices, that's what you
Yep.
presented.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and I'm not arguing, like I said, this is no critique on your part. You came in within budget. My only concern is right now, that federal subsidy came in. And I'm on the fence. I wanted to discuss it. I think this is a very, very low lunch price, breakfast price, and
Well, I'm sorry, but I think the budget that you gave to us shows an anticipated loss of almost $484,000
Correct.
for this.
But in comparison to this year, we were coming in at 900,000 and I got it down to negative 300. So we're hoping that that trend could still go forward.
Mhm.
My only other concern with raising the lunch prices, and we have to feed students. We cannot deny them. We can deny them à la carte, extra milks, pretzels, chips, cookies, ice cream. But the parents know they don't have to pay for lunch and nothing's going to happen because their child is going to be fed. So our negative balances right now are at $78,000. So we raise it more, it's just more negative debt we could incur coming back next year where it might be higher than this year. And
So
again, this is.
I would suggest
no
those are
crystal
two
ball.
different things. Folks that aren't paying their bill is a different problem. It's related, but it's different than what's a reasonable price. We don't want to be the highest. We don't need to be the lowest. But what's a reasonable price?
I do have clarification since you brought it
Okay.
up. When, this has always been a point of contention, but when the students that are on, they're back, they have back bills or whatever, and you mentioned that they're not allowed to do certain things.
Mhm.
Does that go back to similar like Acadel, where are they exempt from extracurricular activities? Is there any kind of?
So I want to get back to that in other discussion. I want to go back to that. I
Well,
think.
we're on a budget, so.
Yeah, but I think going after delinquency, right now we're discussing the price of the lunch, and then we'll come back to that afterwards, I think is the best way to do it.
But I believe that was the point, if I was understanding correctly. The point of clarification was the concern with raised ARs. So
You raise
if
the
the
rate
price
and-
is higher, the risk is that more people will still consume but not pay.
But we're all guessing.
Well,
We're
yes
all
and
guessing
no,
at this.
yes
I
and
mean, We don't
no.
have any data that says, you raise the price 10%, then 2% of the people will eat but not pay. You raise it by 30%.
So I understand your point in bringing it up because you're right. The delinquency numbers, the amounts will increase if our prices increase. However, I don't think that should be a determination on how much we charge for food. And that's really where I'd cut that. I think they're two separate things to discuss. And like I said to Mr. Gelsinger, I do want to kind of go over the how we encourage people to pay that debt. I think that's something we should discuss in in another section later on. And I even briefly spoke to you outside about that. So I do want to cover that, but at a later time. At this point, I feel like we've just intermediately discussed this.
Well, I was just gonna say, I get what you're saying, but so years ago, the state or the federal government paid off our balances. Whatever was out at the end of the year, it got paid off. And it's only been a few years, it was pre-COVID, if I remember correctly, that the districts were responsible for paying off their lunch budgets at the end of the year. I know this because one of our elementary schools pays the budget for all of their delinquent kids every year. And I will tell you that the first year, that was $400. Last year, it was $2,000. So they know. And people are choosing to not pay. So her point, though, while I understand what you're saying, that if we raise it, it's irrelevant, but it isn't, because that revenue you want to see coming in by raising it 25, 15, 30 cents, ultimately, if we're running in the negative and we're going to collections for these people when they're seniors or when they're in 8th grade and they can't go to Hershey Park or whatever it is, we are incurring costs potentially above the increase of the lunch price in mitigation factors. So.
And that might be worth it until the message gets out that when you incur a cost, you're expected to pay.
I understand, but I mean, Crystal, how long have you been with us? I'm sorry.
This will be 8 years.
Okay. And then you were with Hanover before?
13 years.
And there's always been negative lunch balances?
Correct. But when I came here, it was very minimal. So another example is we got a large donation specifically for Bearsville. Till Jade went in and cleared everybody's balance, they still owe $1,500 right now. So it was $6,500 there. The high school and middle school are about 22 and 26,000 in owed balances. The other buildings I'd have to pull it. I know Manheim is pretty much a wiped clean right now.
I brought them.
Oh, okay.
Just for the later on discussion, I do want to have that discussion on how we hold people to account on that, but I understand the intertwine there on the pricing. I get what you're saying, but I really don't think we should be pricing our lunches according to delinquent accounts. I just don't think that's good practice. So with that, I feel like what I'm reading from the board is most are comfortable with the price we're at. We can always raise it later. No?
I don't know that answer. I'd have to contact PD.
Okay. But
Because I know that paid lunch equity tool has to be approved.
Okay.
And that's based on what the recommendation is to the board. So I don't know that answer for
Yeah,
you.
I had a quick comment on this one.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I'm not a big fan of changing what's on here. The presentation a couple weeks ago was stellar.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of stuff went into that presentation. State requirements, federal requirements, all that good stuff. And how she came up with it and how she looks at her staff and all the budgeting and all that. I trust these numbers right here that she came up with. I'm not
Well-
interested in changing this.
And I'm not going to take anything away from her either, but this was a PD tool that determines basically.
It determines whether you can remain the same, whether you must increase 5 cents or 10 cents at the minimum. And then it goes back and pulls numbers from 2010 to current. So we put in the past 2 years and then 2010, and that's how it's
But
determined.
correct me if I'm wrong, that just gives you the minimum you're allowed to keep it at, right? It doesn't.
The minimum increase. That's
Right?
correct.
So we can increase above it. It just gives you the minimum amount that
That you must.
you must increase.
That's correct.
But in her presentation, she felt comfortable with the prediction of the predicted numbers where it was going to balance out here
Okay.
and things like that. That's all I'm saying is I trust her 20 plus years of expertise in this. So, and it's kind of a crapshoot, right? Like there's still an amount of guessing and an amount of following your gut, right? So, I mean, you can't fully predict that. And that was part of her presentation as well, which
Okay.
all things considered, that's where I'm looking at this.
But for for accuracy standpoint, the budget presented anticipates a nearly $500,000 deficit. Now, we're hoping through a variety of initiatives, we're hoping that comes in a lot less than that. But it's not like these numbers for lunch prices are indicating a balanced budget.
No.
I mean, these numbers are indicating a nearly $500,000 loss. And that's why we're suggesting maybe a small incremental increase from what's on here might be warranted. Or because if not, what I would anticipate happening is next year, it will be more than 10 or 15 cents.
But
I don't
do-
know that it'll be more than 10 or 15 cents next year for the minimum, because
No,
it's
it's
been
75 or 10.
between 5 and 10 historically. Now, just to recap the budget and just to keep in perspective, I think our budgets are fairly conservative. So if you're seeing a $500,000 loss, I don't expect that's where we're going to end up. I mean, Crystal, when she manages her staff, does so in a very efficient way. And I think that we'll probably end up with probably $150,000, $180,000 loss. Still a loss, but it's not $500,000. I mean, you look at this year's operations, we went with a budget amount of $968,000 for a loss. The actual came in at just under $300,000. So keep in mind, prior to COVID, we were in the black every single year. We were never in the negative in our budgets. And I believe what you're seeing is a trend where we're getting closer to being back to that in the black status. You know, we had significant increases in salaries and also in food costs that we're having to adapt to, which I think we are adapting to. And I think over time, my expectation is the next couple of years, you're going to see it being back in the black again. It's how we're trending. It's how we're headed that way. So I think that's where you're going to end up. And that's where we've always wanted to operate in the black. We never wanted to be in the red. So that's just my take on the budget. And again, I know that Crystal does a really nice job with when it comes to looking at the costs, looking at the entire operations. She trims back on salaries as far as, you know, staff hours whenever we don't have the meal counts. So she's very, very in tune to trying to make that as an efficient an operation as possible. And again, I turned to before COVID, we were always in the black. So we haven't changed how we operate. We still operate that way. We are simply in the process of overcoming the hurdles from COVID with price increases and with salary increases. And I'm optimistic that in a couple of years, you're going to be in the black.
And I think when I met some of you new board members, I think it was you, Mr. Lady, you said, how long do you think you could come out? Because I shared we were in the black all the time, and I said, give me 3 years. And that was just 1 year. So I'm already ahead of the game. I feel comfortable that we're, like Jeff, we're going to go in that direction. It's just, we got to wade through this storm that we.
And considering all the
that's-
work you do, the last thing we need to do is throw you a curveball right before school opens. So that does weigh into it as far as submitting that. I did want to consider that increase to give you an increased budget to making those orders a little bit easier if you had an increased budget. That was really the ultimate point of putting it forward.
And that's what I wanted to bring up in the presentation you gave us the other day. I actually commended you for being almost dead on with that, because we were at a $300,000 loss, and you kind of set a 3-year plan to be at 150 and then back to even. And your presentation was right there. And to what Mr. Mummer just said, almost identical. He sees that track going. So I don't think that there's any need for this. As far as the increase from both sides, I can say, obviously, the cost of goods is going up. So I can see, you know, it would be reasonable to ask people to pay more. And I don't think that it's going to significantly affect the people that aren't paying, because we're talking about a $2.6 million budget and $80,000 worth of debt. I mean, they're not comparable whatsoever. That being said, I'm not okay with increasing this whatsoever. We're going to stick with the state recommended as far as I'm concerned. If we can consider it next year, if we don't fall in line with the projection that you've shown of $150,000 loss at the end of this year on our way to black, in my opinion.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm going to conclude the discussion and let you sit down. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, could we go ahead and vote on that? Thank you, Jeff.
Sure. All right. So it's the first 5. All right. So Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
All right, so 10B6 is a recommendation to approve a contract between WellSpan Sports Medicine Services uh, to provide an athletic trainer for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Smith. Discussion.
Yes, point of information, please. The agenda states pending review by the solicitor. Can you provide an update?
It was reviewed and I actually compared the one I talked with Mr. Mummert about and the one on the agenda, and it reflects, right? It reflects the.
Yes, it was
edits
reviewed
that we
by council and it was reviewed by WellSpan, and they're okay with the changes that we made. That's the way the process normally works. We usually go back and say, here's the recommended changes from our council. Are you acceptable with these changes? And they were.
Yeah,
So-
and so that PDF reflects those changes, the one that's
Correct.
attached.
Okay,
Will
and-
that be available to the board?
It's on, yeah,
it's on
it's
there.
on there now.
No, it isn't. How many times do we go through this?
I saw the attachment earlier.
Okay, thank you.
I do have questions about the attachment.
Okay.
Page 3. I'd like clarification on cost and billing of services. So if I'm understanding correctly, the term is from July 1st, 2024, this past July 1st, through July 30th, 2029? June, yeah. 2029 is the main emphasis there. So the cost is going to go up every single year. Is this a requirement that to have this service provided?
I'm going to defer, but I know Mr. Wareheim this is a service I think that they need. It's because if I understand, it's the athletic trainer that's on the sideline during the sports games. So, yeah. And I'll let Jeff speak to it because I know he had been working with Troy about this throughout.
So it's not a requirement, to my knowledge, to have it. We have had it over the last couple of years because the athletic training services that we can provide on staff is limited. And we had contracted with OSS. We were in the middle of a 5-year contract with OSS, and in April, they contacted us and said, we're no longer going to be able to provide the services. We can't staff it. And so that's why we went out to look for alternatives. Now, when you look at the cost, the first year and the second year are identical. So there is no increase from year 1 to year 2. Then you see an increase from year 2 to year 3 and year 4 are the same. And then there's an increase in year 5. So there are 2 years that there is no escalation, there are no increase in the fees.
So I'm glad, sorry to cut you off. I'm
Yep.
glad you brought up OSS because that's what I thought I remembered. And so is this comparable to where it was?
It is actually. We were paying OSS, I think, about $30,000 too. So it is very comparable in cost. As far as the abilities, I think WellSpan probably gives us more bang for the buck. They have more opportunities if we have to have athletes go to, doctors or specialists and so forth. We probably have better flexibility with that through WellSpan than we had with OSS. We did get another proposal as well. We had another proposal from a Dreyer, I think it's called Dreyer. And they were in line too as far as with the costs. They were almost identical. We felt that between the two, WellSpan gives us more capabilities than we had with Dreyer.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
No.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
And 10B, item 7, is a recommendation to approve a contract for student transportation.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Lighty. Any discussion? I really can't have any specific other than generally. So I guess we'll go to a vote.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
No.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
No.
6 yes, 3 no.
Ten C, Mrs. Weaver, Program Committee.
Good evening. I have intentions of breaking this up and breaking off number 7, but I was wondering if anyone else wanted me to delineate anything else before I started this tonight. Yes, sir.
I have one or two issues with the handbooks.
Okay. Okay.
don't-
So I'll do
Handbook
one.
separately then?
I'll
Ms.
do
Weaver?
1, and then I'll do 2, 3, and 4. Then I'll do 5, or I'm sorry, I'll do 1. Can I do 1, 5, 6?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, and then 7. Okay? All right. I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 10C 1, 5, and 6.
Second.
Thank you. Number 1 is a recommendation to approve the master agreement between Hoffman Homes Incorporated and Southwestern School District effective August 22nd, 2024 until June 4th, 2025. Southwestern School District as the district of residence shall compensate Hoffman Homes Incorporated, also known as Hoffman Academy, for the program services rendered to the student subject to the provided addendums at a rate of $150 per instructional day while school is in session. A seat will be reserved for the named students. Number 5 is a recommendation to approve the memorandum of understanding between Pennsylvania Comprehensive Behavioral Health, also known as PCBH, and the Southwestern School District to provide school-based mental health outpatient services effective from August 1st, 2024 through July 31st, 2025. And number 6 is a recommendation to approve 2024-2025 occupational therapy service agreement between Katie McMain and Southwestern School District from August 1st, 2024 until June 30th, 2025 at a rate of $82.65 per hour, not to exceed 1,050 hours per year without prior approval, and $92.70 per initial evaluation. And I apologize if I mispronounced her last name.
Okay, so any other discussion on 1, 5, and 6? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Beard.
How
Mr.
many students do we have under number 1 at Hoffman Academy? Is it 1 or 2?
Mrs. Cortina is giving me a sign that we think it's 4 or 5. 4 or 5 students.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Item 10C 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
2 is a recommendation to approve the 2024-2025 Southwestern Elementary School Handbook that encompasses all 4 elementary schools. Number 3, a recommendation to approve 2024-2025 EHMMS Handbook. And number 4, to approve the 2024-2025 Southwestern High School Handbook.
So I offered to Dr. Friel a few administrative suggestions. But after sending those notes, a couple things did occur to me that we have a district vision and mission. I'm not sure why individual buildings then would need separate visions and mission statements, but it seems as though we have that in some cases. And there are some differences on our district website. We have a vision, a mission, and we have 8 beliefs. But then those beliefs that are on the website only carry through to one of the handbooks. But then in the handbooks, we refer to, I think it's a code of ethics, and that refers to policy 101. And in policy 101, we actually call those 6 ethical items, well, we have two different names. One's a code of conduct and one, I think, a code of ethics. And there are a few other administrative recommendations that I had, but the one area that does concern me is in the elementary handbook. And this is on page 39. It's under the music program. And basically it's telling parents that we have these, holiday and spring concerts. And that it gives the list of these are the dates and the times for each of the schools. And it finishes with a statement in italics. Lack of participation could impact the child's grade for the third marking period. So if your child doesn't participate in the holiday concert or the spring concert, they might be given a lesser grade. I'm not sure that it's appropriate, to downgrade someone because for whatever reason, they don't participate in an extracurricular activity at 6 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. or, whenever they're scheduled for. So my recommendation is that that sentence should be stricken.
If I'm not mistaken, and I'm only saying this because my child is in the music program and he participates in all these concerts, it's not extracurricular per se. So he has classes. They're classes that he takes. Like chorus is a class. It's not like an after school. That's part of his grade. So he has to sing in the concert as part of his grade. That being said, I know from personal experience that when my son was sick last year, during the Christmas concert, actually, he was sick for a week. And I mean, I was at the doctor's nonstop. I was this close to taking him to the concert because I was like, I want to see you sing, but he was sick. So he did not participate in the Christmas concert, which killed me. But I don't think, if I remember correctly, it did not affect his grade because he was sick. It wasn't like he just didn't go because he just felt like not going. But that being said, from my understanding, and I'm pretty sure, I'm certain, just based on his schedule and the grading and all that, his classes, his orchestra, his chorus, all that is during, I don't know, but they're called specials or whatever they're called, during the school year, so during the day. So it's not extracurricular.
Yeah,
per
I don't
se.
have a problem with daytime activities. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the school is from that morning period until that afternoon period, you're here for education. However, I do have an absolute problem with a statement in a handbook saying we're going to disadvantage the grade of your child if your child does not, sing in the, the concert
Right.
that's 6 in the evening, 7 in the evening, whenever that.
Do you mind if I call up Dr. Cromer? I feel like he's probably going to be able to speak to that a little bit. Mr. Beard, maybe it'll help you a little bit with the thinking on that.
Yes, we've had scenarios to that point. We have students that are sick or because just maybe transportation. I think some of the things that you're concerned about or you're questioning, like what could happen and because they are at 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night and so forth. Many times what our music teachers do will find alternate ways to assess them. So it is a performance in the evening. So what will typically happen is a student the teacher will take their grade or they'll look at their performance during a rehearsal or things like that. So there is a piece to the curriculum and the performance side of that, and they'll take that into account. Typically kids are coming and we're very flexible, or the teachers have been very flexible, even at the middle school or even high school when things come up, that it typically doesn't affect the grade because we find alternate ways, just like we would in the classroom. When things come up, if kids are sick for whatever reason, we're making alternate assessments, alternate ways to perform, or share out whatever the learning is for that particular content. So I do understand. I just want to explain what we end up doing as far as meeting the needs of the kids.
Sure. The practicality is that there's probably no student whose grade is reduced because they did not participate in the evening concert. So if that's the practicality, why do we need that statement? I know why we need that statement. So we can arm twist those second graders and fourth graders into participating in that concert. And parents will do that too, arm twist their children into participating in that event that they don't want to be a part of, because we want to see a full stage.
But let me redirect to something I'm reading in here, and that is, this is part of the music curriculum. So if they're signing up for band or chorus,
Well, this is an elementary school. You don't really sign up for any curriculum in elementary school.
okay.
do you?
You do?
You do, not everyone participates.
So that's the distinction we need to make, right? Is if they're signing up for a specific band or orchestra at each level to participate in this or no?
But I just want to clarify that yes and no.
Okay,
So you're kind of both right. And
Okay.
You're going to end up both being right in this.
great. Everyone gets to be right. That's perfect.
So everybody's right. K1, 2, and K to 4, it is part of the general music
Okay,
class. There's no signing up.
okay,
There is in 5th grade chorus, 4th grade and 5th grade band and orchestra.
okay.
So those are signups. You come for the performances. The other are part of
Okay.
general music.
I appreciate the
Yep,
delineation.
and that's
yeah.
embedded in the curriculum. When they get to 5th grade is when they get to choose, do they want to perform the shift of curriculum changes in 5th grade? So it's not, they separate the two, and now it's by choice. Similar to the middle school setting or high school setting.
Right,
So
and-
to
and
your point, Mr. Beard, then 4th, 5th, and 6th, I would say they're signing up to do that, just like they would a sport. But K through 4, they're not necessarily signing up to come after hours. We're requiring them to show up after a typical school day. Is that a fair assessment,
Yes.
right?
Right, and I will tell you what I experienced, and I will tell you what my children experienced in a different school district from here, is constant arm twisting. You must be there at that concert.
I will tell you in personal experience, I didn't send my child to a concert last year because we had another family engagement that we had to go to, and we had to, and this is on a personal note that
Yeah,
we
no, I
had to go
appreciate it.
somewhere else. I was not going to that concert, and we had to shift to do something a little bit different, and they made alternate things for them. So
And I
I understand when those things come up. They've
You've
happened.
attended your share of concerts.
Yeah, I have. So, and I respect everything, but there was something that was going on that we could not change. So,
And Mr. Beard, your comment is really in the handbook. Does that need to be stated in the handbook, if I'm understanding
Right,
it correctly,
I
right?
understand, we always want to
Okay.
encourage children to participate, even in things
Right.
that they may feel uncomfortable with. Go out there and try something, you
Sure.
might like it, you're gonna learn something new.
That your concern is about that statement.
That particular statement, I believe, is off base.
I mean, so I agree with Kirby on this. I think that though it comes down to semantics, it comes down to the wording. I have also opted my children out because of social anxiety. And that's not typically an excused thing. And there were optional things that were given to that child because that child couldn't stand on a stage and be stared at by everyone else's mom and dad. So I agree that potentially the wording can be shifted, but I also do agree with the idea of it being part of the class. It is the final performance, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, in an attempt to keep all of our children safe in all of our buildings, we generally do not have daytime concerts where we allow the public and/or the parents into the buildings anymore, which when I grew up, that's when you did it. You actually had your concert in the middle of the day. Grandma and grandpa came, dad took off work, and it was awesome. But we don't do that anymore. So the concerts default to being in the evenings, which also works better with a lot of family schedules as far as getting off of work. So I think there is a happy medium here. Just to reiterate the importance of music programs in schools and things that you do opt into, but also not to laud it over anyone's head that, like you said, you can't fail a class because the idea of standing in front of people. We had a kid vomit all over the stage at Mannheim one year because of his anxiety being in front of his friends. And maybe for that kid, an extra different thing would have been better. So I see it both ways. And if it's a simple change of semantics, I think it's not the worst change to
So
make.
So moving forward, Mr. Beard, can I suggest that we make a motion to amend that statement in the handbook to read lack of participation by those taking band or chorus could impact the child's grade for the third marking period? And that would make it those who signed up for fourth, fifth, or sixth band and chorus?
Yes, that would be fine with me.
Okay, so you want to make that motion? Motion to amend?
All right then. So I would like to make a motion to amend, to change the wording so that it applies only to those fourth and fifth graders that have.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you could just accept, you could just accept the handbook pending the change that we make. It doesn't, you
Okay.
don't have to change
all
the
right, so
motion necessarily,
that's the
but
best way to
just.
go forward then.
Can I offer
Because
something
if
else?
you have any other changes or thoughts, I mean, on any of the other handbooks, I was just saying
I think the other items were generally kind of.
what you had already talked about.
Administrative.
Okay.
But I think to that point, Mr. Beard did share a couple of emails with me earlier, just today, really, that he offered a couple of other thoughts. And so to Dr. Dalton's suggestion, if you just accept the handbooks as they're written now, pending some final edits and administrative recommendations, and then I will be happy to share what Mr. Beard shared with me to the building administrators who are working on those handbooks. I'm happy to share those comments, and if anyone else has other comments about some pieces that you would like the building principals to put into place before the final release, please feel free to do that, like to let me know, and I'll just be happy to send them on. Is that fair to do it that way?
The only thing I noticed was several of the pages in the glossary were not aligned with the actual information, where it seems like stuff got added or deleted, everything moved. And then my question was gonna be is, do these handbooks really need to be this long? Like, I question the reading these things. I mean,
Sure.
I question whether our parents are actually reading the entire handbook.
I'm sure every page, Mr. Gelsinger.
So
Every
have we
page.
considered, I mean, I hate to say it, but dumbing this down a little bit and saying, here's the meat and potatoes of what we need our parents to actually know.
Well, to your point, last year we introduced a new policy, I think, into the middle school handbook, if I remember correctly, and an additional sheet, single sheet that was required with parent signatures went home. And I agree with you. I think the likelihood of a parent, I hate to say it, but like reading through a cheat sheet and signing off on it is on the key points, right? Because like I'm looking at physical education right now because this conversation has happened multiple times while I've sat at this table. And right now, it's it says swimsuits, one-piece tank suit comparable to a competition swimsuit for females. And I know we've had conversations in the past about two-piece full coverage swimsuits because the one-piece suits are getting harder and harder to find. To your point, that's something that can be handled at a building level, but it also could be a one-pager to every parent when their kid starts gym or first day of school, because guess what? If we stick with that, moms and dads need to be looking now.
There's a legal requirement to the handbook, and the reason its length is as it is there are many things we have to include by law, which is why it does get a little lengthy. I don't think that the expectation is that we would, even though we say signing off on the handbook every single year, the reality is people are not reading every single page of this handbook every single year. I mean, I'm a parent in the district. I know that that is true. We don't do that, but we have a responsibility from a legal side to make sure that things are included.
We do refer to this in multiple disciplinary
Right.
scenarios, so it
Right.
is important to get
Exactly.
that language
Yes.
distinct. Because it is, and that's where I would say it gets lengthy because it's referred to in multiple disciplinary hearings. And that's why you have to have that language in there that covers everything very clearly.
Right.
So we can hold them responsible for those.
Can I go back to what I suggested earlier, though? Really, if you do have some specific things individually that you see as you're looking at it that could be offered and edited in final publication, can we do that?
To your point, Dr. Frill, this is the first time we've seen the handbooks to approve them. So I'm going to suggest that this is basically a tentative adoption at this point, and anybody that wants to submit changes, we should submit them to administration between now and the next meeting for a final adoption of the handbooks. And at that point, we could go through, because we can't individually suggest what should be in a handbook. We should be doing that as a board. So if you have changes between now and the next meeting when we do a full adoption of our handbooks, then by all means, bring them forward and we'll discuss them at that next meeting on the final adoption.
Can I ask a clarification of our building principles as well? How does that do with the timeline? I know that these need to go out and be ready for the start of school, and we are pretty quickly approaching that. If this was a tentative adoption right now with the handbooks as they are, with some suggested edits, if there are some things the board would like to just ask about that we could share with you, and it was approved at the next board meeting, how would that fare as far as turnaround from then?
That's
to the
August
start
14th.
Of school.
The next school board meeting is August 14th.
And we don't print them
Who-
anymore.
Us, I say print won't have a, oh,
They're all
Okay,
electronic.
available online?
So are,
Okay.
is that okay? I guess is what I'm asking.
I'm glad to hear that because my response there, it's going to sound kind of hard, but the board should be getting these things in time to properly consider and approve or revise. And if we're not given time to revise, then I don't think we should be delaying our considerations just because they weren't provided to us with enough time to alter them. But, so moving forward, I would say this would be a vote to consider 2, 3, and 4, I think is what's on the table, right?
Okay, so but
Tentatively
just-
pending.
Just, the words are written, and I read recommendation to approve, not to tentatively approve. So
Okay.
if you're asking me, to
motion to
tentatively
amend.
put them up, then I need to,
So I'd make a motion to amend 2, 3, and 4 to read tentatively approve in front of each approve in 2, 3, and 4.
second.
So motion by me, second.
So you're amending the motion. I mean, I think the question becomes a tentative approval tonight. What does that accomplish? If you are just going to put it up at another board meeting after you reviewed it, it might make more sense to either vote it down or table it because the tentative adoption seems to suggest,
Okay.
I don't know whether they're
Right,
in
it's-
place until
that's
August
fine.
14th or not.
Normally it
So,
would be a final draft, we would tentatively adopt, and then it would sit for a while. So if we're going to be amending this.
right, if you know you're
just-
amending it, I guess
Okay.
that's my point. That's.
Fair. All right,
so would you like me to make a motion to table the handbooks?
sure.
Not yet. I'm
Or
not
we
done
can vote it
talking about
down. We can table or vote it down.
Yes. I want to talk about lunch prices again. I just want to bring up that the lunch prices aren't inaccurate
I
in
like,
there.
I like your suggestion to table it because we haven't been given enough time to consider and throw our considerations into this. So let's make a motion to table it. And so anyone want to make a motion or shall I? I'll make a motion to table 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Motion by me, second by Mr. Beard. Voice vote, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
No.
No.
All right, let's do a roll call. That was,
Mrs. Bauer,
No.
Mr. Beard,
Table, yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
No.
Mr. Gelsinger,
No.
Mr. Lighty,
No.
Mr. Plessick,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mrs. Weaver,
No.
Mr. Galzella.
yes.
2 yes, 7 no.
Okay. So now we proceed with the motion on the table,
Which was, just so I'm
which is
clear.
2,
the-
3, and 4 as they
The
were.
original motion,
Yep.
which you already had the second for. So all we need to do is a roll call vote for that?
Yep,
Can I have more discussion?
sure.
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to know, we've removed a lot of the clothing guidance. And I was wondering if there were specific reasons for that, if we're finding it too hard to enforce, or if we're just lowering our standards to make it easier. For instance, we've taken off the shoulder tops are no longer inappropriate. Spaghetti strap dresses we're removing. Off the shoulder shirts need to have a tank underneath. We've removed that you can't wear pajamas or slippers. I don't agree with removing that.
Justin, just for clarity, is this high school? and
I'm
middle
on the high school,
Okay.
page 55 currently.
Just wanted to know if it was in the middle school too.
We've removed, maybe it's not an issue anymore, but the old version says you can't have a pacifier, and we're removing that. So maybe it's not an issue, but I don't want to allow it either, so. I remember. Okay. So what about some of the other things that are decency related? Are we finding it hard to enforce when we're just not enforcing? Is that why we're removing it, or?
We met as an admin team, obviously Nate, Wes and I, and Tasha. And a lot of conversation around trying to enforce certain things for certain outfits and so on. Like there was something in there about revealing, it said something about cleavage. And we're like, okay, we're not going to enforce with a girl. I see your cleavage, but I don't see your cleavage. We felt that was inappropriate language to be in a handbook. So Tasha had a lot of input on that, obviously, as a female, and Nate and Wes and I. And, there were certain wordings that we said we don't feel comfortable, enforcing that wording the way it was. Obviously, there's still things that, clothing needs to be appropriate for school, modest. It can't have inappropriate language on it, things like that. But, there were certain things that we just decided as a group that we thought we should take that wording out.
And I don't see any replacement though. So like, I don't see any wording changes with a replacement. We're just completely saying off the shoulder shirt. For example, B on here says an off the shoulder shirt needs to have a tank underneath.
Yep.
We just completely removing that. So now we can wear an off the shoulder shirt.
Yeah. And
whatever.
again, it was just, talking as a group, we were debating on how difficult it is with clothing in today's day and age to try and enforce certain things. I have 3 sons. I don't have 3 daughters. My brother has 3 daughters. I know I've had conversations with him about, you don't understand when you shop for girls now, it's not like it was 20 years ago. You can't, shorts, shirt, they're shorter now. And they said it's very hard to find clothing for certain things. So as the conversation went on, it was just certain things that we said it's very hard to enforce certain things in today's clothing environment.
Even pajamas and slippers.
Well, and again, we have
Pajama days.
yes,
And
we
that's an
have
approved
pajama
day, but
days
that
and things
doesn't-
like that. And and unfortunately, some people wear almost like you would see as a scrubs. You see people as nurses or dental hygienists and stuff like that. And it's very hard then to sit there and say those are pajama pants, those are not, those are scrubs, those are, so it just got into the whole idea of it's very hard to enforce certain things in terms of what are pajama pants, what aren't. Because I know, Tasha was dealing a lot with dress code in the spring. So we were really relying a lot on the conversations we had with her too, in terms of what is easy to enforce and what's not. And there was just a lot of gray areas. Like I said, what is the interpretation of a pajama pant? If I have a plaid looking pant on in today's day and age, you might say, oh, it's just plaid pants, but it could be pajama pants or it could be flannel pants or something like that. So again, a lot of conversation. We went through a lot of those discussions and input from everybody. And like I said, Tasha did a phenomenal job this spring with discipline and clothing and things like that. Dress
And that's
coding
kind of where I'd
kids.
rather see it go, is one
Yeah.
person setting the standard, and I think Tasha's been doing that. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know why we're removing these now, when we seem to have figured out a way to regulate it a lot better just the last 6 months of this year.
Well, and again, her input was it's not easy to enforce that. And she's having a lot of conversations with parents that they're saying, I don't agree with that. That's not what the clothing is. It's not pajama pants. It's leisure pants or something like that. And so again, that was the conversation. Obviously, we want kids to be dressed modestly. They're not wearing inappropriate guns, knives, cuss words, things like that, alcohol on their shirts, things of that nature. But again, a very difficult conversation to have as an admin team, but we were really kind of trying to consider the environment and what's appropriate and what's not.
I do see that. I guess we remove specific guidelines, but we still have our modesty guidelines.
Sure.
So there's a catch-all for that if we need it. Okay.
I, for one, am glad that some of this is getting removed, because I think that's the problem, is it keeps getting added and added. And that's how we're up to 90 pages in a handbook. So.
And that was why we removed.
I think that's what needs to
classifier
happen, is
and
we need
things
to go
like that.
back and redo and remove a lot more stuff, except for the requirements like Dr. Friel is referring to.
Yeah, and I probably haven't seen, now I probably am going to jinx myself, but I probably haven't seen a pacifier, in 10 years in a high school, including here and where I worked before.
Now watch, there'll probably be 10 kids that show up
20
on
years,
day one
20-year
for the
repeat.
pacifier, but that's why we said that's kind of an old dress code. Why are we even leaving that in? You know, let's take that out.
All right, thank you. And then, page 56 has our lunch at $3 instead of the $3.10 that we just approved. And it says that breakfast is $2.10, which we just approved being free, so that needs corrected.
Right, so again, if you have some of those kind of edits and things, just send them our way. We'll make sure we get those in for the final publication. And it makes me also just think, as I'm listening to this conversation, perhaps as we move forward, not doing it today, of course, that this board would benefit from a slight presentation of the handbooks before you vote from the administrators to talk about changes that came up. They'll love me for me saying this publicly. I'm sure everybody's saying thank you, Dr. Frio, for that, but it would probably help to just point out some of those changes at a separate program.
And
committee
Dr. Phil,
meeting.
to your point, right, if a individual board member wants to send you a change, then that's not a board directive to make that change. You would have to then bring it to the whole board, which would make this a not approval. So we're either approving today or we're not really.
I think yes, to a degree, but there's a difference between and I'm going to use this word maybe wrong, but you call it a substantive substance change or just a wording change, right? Like the lunch numbers, we just approved those. So that isn't changing a policy, but yeah, something that would be an egregious change, like, oh,
Right,
I would like school to start at
Right,
8:26.
that was my intent with the table, is the swimsuit or the wording on the band or the pajamas. We can't make those alterations if we've approved this. We're bringing it back for another approval. If we're not tabling to make adjustments, which we've just voted not to do, our vote on the table is to approve it as is. So we just voted to approve it as is. If you have any adjustments, the only way to do that now is to vote it down and then bring this back for a later vote. And with that, I'm going to take it to a vote.
I have one clarifying question before we do that.
Yes.
I have unmuted myself about 12 times, so I'm going to say.
Okay, yes, sorry, I didn't notice.
So if this is not approved, and if this goes back into the editorial process, will there be a different, I really appreciated the redlining because I am one of those few people who had already read these previously, so the redlining was very helpful. Will there be a very clear differentiator for what has been added or changed so that we would know easily?
A red line and an orange line.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we could distinguish that for you. I'm sure we could have some editing process that you would see red line version and then a separate piece to that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Frill, real fast before we do the roll call vote, would you consider these handbooks somewhat of a living document?
No, not a living document. Year to year, we make the changes, obviously, but once they're published, they're published. I
For
mean,
that
that's-
calendar
For that
year.
particular calendar year. If we voted this down right now, we did not have a handbook for this coming year, we would rely on last year's handbook as our guiding principle moving into this year, the one that had already been approved. That would be my guess of how we would move forward. So we don't want that because, as Dr. Downs said, and I'm not just saying Dr. Downs, I'm sure every administrative team has done the same thing. Hours spent talking about it, working as a group, figuring out what the edits are, trying to make those recommendations. So there's a lot of man hours behind it. But the worst case scenario would be we'd have to just rely on the old handbook, which is really not ideal at all because there are a lot of necessary changes, I'm sure, that have gone into the discussion for this coming year.
And Dr. Cromer, correct me if I'm wrong, but our back to school nights for our incoming kindergartners are August 12th and our returning upper grade, maybe a couple different buildings for the elementaries, but I think it's the 12th and the 13th of August, correct? I know it, I know for a fact at Mannheim, it's the 12th and the 13th, but I believe the other elementary schools might have slightly different dates, but it is before the 14th of
It's
August,
the 12th.
which is our next meeting.
We have a whole meeting on the 12th.
Again, when we get a presentation up against a deadline, I don't think it's fair to board members. So I don't consider that a consideration. If we're to consider and adjust anything with proper presentation, it should be in time to allow those changes to happen and be enacted by this board prior to that deadline being reached. With that, Jeff, could you kindly do a roll call? I think this has been thoroughly discussed.
Mr. Beard,
No.
Mrs. Brennan,
No.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
6 yes, 3 no.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 10C7.
Second.
This is a recommendation to approve the request from homeschooled student 2027-01 for Southwestern School District to provide tuition payment to Conewago Valley School District to allow for the student to pursue the specialized agricultural programs offered at New Oxford High School.
Second. Motion by Ms. Weaver, second by me. Discussion?
Justin.
We can't really have any, can we?
No.
Right, so we'll go right to a vote. Yes,
Mrs.
Mr.
Brennan.
Beard.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I missed that part of the executive session.
You should
So-
just abstain then.
Right.
Yep.
That's what I want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, so I will abstain.
Mrs. Brennan,
No.
Mr. Gelsinger,
No.
Mr. Lighty,
No.
Mr. Plessick,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mrs. Weaver,
No.
Mrs. Bauer,
No.
Mr. Beard,
Abstain?
Mr. Galzella.
No.
0 yes, 8 no's, 1 abstention.
Moving on, 10D, Mr. Plessick, Building and Grounds.
Thank you, Mr. Galazella. Would anyone like any of them broken out 1 through 5 there under building and grounds? No? All right. Should I wait until Mrs. Weaver's back?
Can you talk slowly?
I'll make a motion a while. All right, I'd like to make a motion for 10D items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first one is the capital project for the high school, paying the contractors. The second one is the presentation about the mural on the side of the box, press box. Number 3 is a purchase of a F-350 with, I believe, a service body. And I'm believing a lift gate or some sort of uplift. Number 4 is, I guess, repairs for the box truck. And number 5 is a change order for additional resin floors.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Plessick, second by Mr. Lighty. Excellent timing, by the way. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
10E.
I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 10E. Recommendation to approve the Southwestern Mustang cheerleaders to attend a stunt clinic at Dallastown High School.
Second.
Motion by Lighty, second by Smith. Any discussion?
Who is providing the transportation?
So I sent an email to our head cheerleading coach with a few questions, and I did not get a response. So I don't know if anybody knows that, but that was one of my questions.
I did talk to Dr. Burkhart today about that. There is no transportation request for this group from the district for that particular date. We don't have any information, but should that come in, that's not part of the approval process for the group. But should that come in, we'll make sure we would let you know.
So their parents will be driving them, presumably.
Not sure, presumably.
That answers my other question of how many chaperones we have.
Or the transportation request hasn't come in yet.
But to
Right.
your
If it does,
point,
we can bill
if
them.
it comes in, then it would be forwarded to us for approval.
Yes, we could make sure that you get that notification if that comes in. Mr. Harrell said it was not in as of today.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Frill. Seeing no other discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
10F, policy, that's me. We have no current policies under discussion. 10G, mental health and wellness.
There's no report. I would like to just note that I am hopefully working on something potentially that will focus on a volunteer basis, help administration, teachers, staff with the mental health, coping, emotional support aspect of their job and life as a whole. So stay tuned.
Okay. 10H, Mr. Gelsinger.
Nothing.
10I, Safety Committee. I'd just like to highlight, we're moving forward. We did recently meet with negotiations, initial stage, I should say, development to look into cell tower engagement to take care of that whole of communications between these buildings, which is definitely something that we would be looking at as Safety Committee to make sure that people can have proper communications, especially when they have a dire need for it. So we're still in the early stages of that. And that's all I'd have for that. Legislative 11, PSBA. Seeing nothing, we'll go to reports. Solicitor.
Nothing to add to the report that I submitted.
Thank you. York County School of Technology. I have no additional information from there. LIU.
Nothing other than what was sent in the email.
Okay, thank you. Recreation Commission.
Okay, I just have a brief update. Ms. Billman is at a principals conference this week. So she sent the following: 137 children have been signed up and paid the registration fee. West Manheim has been the largest daily participation with typically 25 to 30 kids each day. Manheim has had our smallest participation with typically 12 to 15 children each day. July 22nd to the 25th is the final week of the program. It was a little challenging to finalize staffing based on the approval timing of the program, but overall the program has run very well all summer long.
Okay. Thank you. Superintendent report, I guess you're gonna handle both, Dr. Frill? Okay.
So I really don't have anything from Dr. Burkhart, but I did have something I needed to bring up with the board tonight. And that has to do with the comprehensive planning process. So Pennsylvania Department of Education requires every school district in the state of Pennsylvania every 3 years to go through a formal, lengthy, robust, comprehensive planning process. So I am in charge of leading us through that. Telling you this tonight because at the 14th of August meeting, I'll be bringing to you the first step of that, which is a submission of names that will have been invited from the community, faculty, students, board. All of you would be asked to be a part of that process in some way, staff, administrators as well. So the whole process, we have to have a submission to the state and approved by this board by March 31st of 2025. So we have to start it now because there are 3 phases to the process. Mr. Beard referenced earlier something to do with the mission, the vision, values. That is a part of the comprehensive planning process. So that's the very beginning of it. There's a needs assessment, some other things that we have to do in this middle phase, and then there are some goals and action items that we'll develop in the 3rd phase. I'll be bringing some information to you at the next meeting for you to look at. And again, I'll kind of walk us through each step of it. Right now, it's just making sure that you knew it was coming. Certainly answer any questions for you, but we will have a lot of time together on this over the next 6 months. So we may not need to do that all tonight, but that is coming. So FYI.
How does community members get on that list to be invited to?
Yep, so right now they've been, I've asked each of the buildings, the levels, to make some recommendations of students and parents. I think The list will go out. I'll send some invitations out to see if people would be interested in that. Certainly, as you look at that list, if there are people that you would like to invite into that list, we would just need to know those names as well, but I'll have that for you at the 14th of August.
Okay.
All right.
And with that, we'll move on to the business administrator, Mr. Mummer.
Thank you. In addition to my report, I'm pleased to report that the state budget was finally adopted 10 or 11 days late. We're still waiting to get some of the details from that adoption, and once we get that and can actually analyze what it all means to us, we'll present that information to the board in August. So just want to let you know, we haven't seen everything yet. They're still working on some of it, so look forward to seeing that in August. That would end my report.
Okay. So.
I would like to add to Jeff's report. This is from the transportation section. The TransFinder transition is coming along better than expected. So it's a good news story for our transportation department. The new software that we bought to help us with bus routes is going better than expected. So I think it's appropriate we bring up a good news story when we have one.
So I had one comment related to that report, and that was when we got down to the food and food services report. Just for clarity, I'll recount what the report there says, which is the negative account balances end of year by school. So we've got 1,317 in Bearsville. Manheim is 3,122. Park Hills is 6,518. West Manheim is 6,417. EHMMS is $24,127. And the high school has $29,219. Those are negative account balances for our food services that are going unpaid. Now, as I understand it, we provide a free reduced lunch, which you can sign up for and complete the paperwork. And that's if you're a certain income level, and if you're below that, you're accounted for. So one of the distinctions I want to clarify is, can you have a negative balance if you've already completed that paperwork? You can. So I'm sorry, can you?
It's not retroactive.
Okay, so they could accrue a negative balance and then sign up, and then that balance continues forward basically on the books.
Sometimes we don't realize that they have that financial situation until after they've already been not paying for lunches.
Right.
And that prompts them to fill out the forms, but by that time, they've already accumulated some negative balances.
Right, and that's what I wanted to start with, is how much of this balance comes from that, basically, where we hit, okay, is there a way to understand that, or that? Yeah. I get you. Can you take the mic, please? I'm sorry. It's just for the viewers so they know what's going on. I'm sorry.
So every Monday night at 7 o'clock, an email goes out and a phone call, because I email and call myself because my son's too lazy to get money out of my wallet. So they get notifications every Monday, and
You've
we
got
have
'em.
parents who this year wanted to go, I think, to prom or graduation, owed like $1,500. Well, then they're paranoid. Well, I didn't know. Nope, we can pull up every time you were called, if you answered, if you just put us the voicemail, and also that you opened and read the email. So they get plenty of notices.
And that's what I wanted to get to. I wanted to start from making sure we don't negatively impact people who can't pay their bill. And that's why the first question. And then we get to, what are we doing to make those who can pay their bill but don't pay their bill? What are those consequences? And I guess that's directed more towards our administrators. So
I know graduation and prom.
I guess I called up the wrong person, Crystal. I can let you sit back down and call up an administrator, right? Sorry, Crystal.
No, I do want to caution, when you folks look at obligations for the high school,
Yeah.
they bring that with them.
Okay.
So if a kid had an obligation at Bearsville and EHMMS, they hit our high school, they walk in the door with a $700 broken laptop fee. So they bring that with them.
Okay.
With that said, we do certain things. Obviously, our dances are not, they're not part of like, it's your right to be at a dance. It's an extracurricular. So we do hold those kids. You can't purchase tickets for the homecoming dance, for prom, for snowball. You can't participate in those events unless you've fulfilled your obligations. Now, we go through a lot of angry parents about that every year. So a lot of times we'll try and put some on a payment plan, things like that, because some kids will come with a $900 or $1,000 broken laptop fee for years accumulated at the other levels. And then we say, okay, you got to show us some good faith, like you're trying to pay it. So we could try and put you on some type of monthly payment while you're in high school. But it is very difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. There's certain things we can't, like I can't say I can hold your diploma or something like that. That's against the law. I can't do those things. But when it comes to our dances, it is a big carrot. I'm not going to lie to you. Kids want to go to homecoming. Kids want to go to prom. So they do, a lot of them, they do miraculously all of a sudden pay the $200 balance they owed, things like that. But with that said, not everybody has the financial capability to do that. So we do try and help and assist and put them on some type of payment plan while they're in high school. So we try as best we can with some good faith things, but it is very difficult.
What about sports?
Sports, again, I can't say you can't participate on a football team or something like that because you had a laptop fee for middle school. I can't do that legally. Yeah, I can't.
But
do
we
that.
we can prohibit them if they're not performing academically, but we can't prohibit
Totally
them
different. That's
if they're not
PIAA. That's
paid.
PIAA law.
What about early dismissal?
No, again, you're talking academics, if they, oh, wait, no, fifth period, we can, I mean, we could sit there and say, hey, you have obligations. That's a slippery slope, especially when you're talking about financial capability of families, to do that. We use a lot of the early dismissal with things like your discipline. Obviously, we're academics, you aren't achieving your grades, so therefore you can't sign up for early dismissal. You need to be remediating with your teachers and so on. So it's a slippery slope, I think, to sit there and say, you're a senior, you can't leave early, even though you have A's in all your classes because you had a $200 fee from the middle school. I don't know. I'd refer to Dr. Dalton on that, if that was even legal or not.
I think the voice of the majority of the board that I've heard recently, including tonight, is we're not going to stand by and let people have thousands of dollars in debt. I know our district that makes the rest of the taxpayers pick up the bill. So I think personally, I think we need to start taking that a little bit more seriously. And if people are not paying their bills, then they need to put in for the free and reduced lunch program. So they're not accruing those bills and pushing it on the rest of the taxpayers.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I give my staff of kudos because they do a lot every year to get kids that had balances from other levels to pay that, to go to the homecoming dance in ninth grade and things like that. I don't know what the other levels have in place, like, hey, you can't go to this or you can't do that. But I do know, my ladies in the office, they bust their tail trying to get kids to fulfill obligations. And I know our student council advisors really work with kids and come to us and say, hey, this kid can't get a ticket, this kid, because they owe an obligation. So there's a lot of work that goes on, especially with DI Cassetta. She does a phenomenal job in the office working with that.
And just so the public understands, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't deny any child a lunch. Therefore, they can continue to rack their bill up, and there is nothing that we can do to them. The only thing we can do is not allow them to get a la carte items.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
I think the other thing, and I agree with you, but I think the other thing we have to remember about this piece is that, especially at the elementary level, the children probably do not realize their parents are not paying.
Agree.
True.
So the punishment of children for potentially conscious decisions made by adults, maybe unconscious decisions made by adults, is unfortunate. I am for people paying their balances 100%, but I think we just need to remember, who does the ultimate responsibility fall under the age of 18? It falls to the parents. So moving forward and making sure that we maintain that as we sit here and talk about mental health, as we sit here and talk about all the other things that are so important to our students, it is the parent's responsibility. Now, you have a kid that drops a laptop every 2.5 minutes and every laptop he's ever gotten, he's broken. And okay, to a degree, yes, that's on him, or her. But I think we have to stop saying the kids, because a kindergartner who's running $150 negative balance on lunch, they have no idea. They don't even know their number half the time. Least of all know that their parents aren't paying. So that's just, that is the one part about this that bothers me a lot is, yes, we will feed them, but we need to feed them because they have no say in this. And when we talk about knowing who has balances and who doesn't, and who's the chronic offender and who's not, you have to think about that there are potentially situations where parents that have had very good paying jobs and have continued to pay for years and years and years and then get laid off, or they have temp work and the temp work ends and they don't have the next job. There are going to be those situations where it is a temporary issue and they will catch up, I'm sure, that are good people. So again, I don't want to lump this into all one thing because I don't think it is. There are your chronic offenders and they're always going to be there. But I do think that we also have situations where people have fallen on hard times or maybe, we're laying in hard on these kids and these kids have absolutely no control over what's happening to them.
And to her point, and I'm probably somewhat in the minority, may not want to hear this, but no child, I don't care if they're 17 or 7, should hear or know of a balance they have due to a parent not paying for, again, whatever reason. They shouldn't even know it. So I find it really hard to punish a child, I don't care what age they are, for this, because they absolutely should not even have a wherewithal to the knowledge that their parent owes 500, 7,000, whatever. Again, we're not talking about broken laptops because that's their fault. I'm talking about lunches here. That's the parent's responsibility, the end. So I am struggling with punishing a child for that.
But they do know it because if they walk up to the a la carte item, they get told they can't have it, correct?
Well,
So we're already telling them that. So you can't say they
Well-
shouldn't know that. They already know that. Look, I agree, the kids deserve to be fed, and nobody here has said that the kids should not be fed. What we're saying is the rest of the taxpayers should not be paying the burden of $78,000 or $80,000 for a group of kids that their parents are not paying the bills. And we have got to figure out how to drive home that we're not going to allow this to happen. At least that's my perspective. If you're not eligible for free or reduced lunches, then pay your bills. That's how this works.
So, Mr. Mummer, if I can get, when they graduate and they have a balance, I know that we've talked before about we send them to collections. Is that the child or the parent? Who goes to collections?
It's the parent.
It is the parent.
It is the parent.
Okay, all right. So at least we're not sending these kids out in the world with a debt right away.
To that point, I have had discussions with Mr. Mummer to that regard. Collections is expensive. What I was just discussing with solicitor, I think this might bear fruit, is if a parent carries a balance and that is not put in for the free and reduced lunch, AKA they're above the poverty level, then I'm suggesting maybe we develop a contract with the parents every year when they sign up for food services, that if you have an unpaid balance at the end of the year, you will incur a penalty of whatever it takes us to take them to collection or a piece thereof. If you have a $200 unpaid balance and you don't pay it within 30 days, then you incur a $500 to $1,000 penalty, whatever it would take us to take them to collections. Then it no longer becomes a cost to us. I think that's something that we could look into, and that's what I was just asked solicitor to do. So I think that might be something we could do to bring a penalty to bear to make them pay. Is anyone against pursuing that?
I think it's a great idea. And I have something to add to that. I think we've talked about before that there's a large majority of these people that probably would qualify for free lunches, but
Right.
they're unwilling or embarrassed to get it. And all I have to say is that's unfortunate because again, that's fallen on the taxpayer because of their inaction. So if we were to implement something like that and put a little bit more teeth to it, would encourage them to sign up. I would say, you know, if half of these people have the possibility to sign up and get it, but are not doing it, they're doing a disservice to their entire community because of their inaction.
And to that point, so if we had that penalty, we could waive that penalty if they applied for the school lunch
And received it.
and
That
received
would
it.
be a very good way to convince them to.
On that same
Wow.
point, I would also make sure that we're educating parents that whether it's pride or embarrassment or whatever it is, that because of privacy laws and rules and procedures, that nobody can tell anybody what kid is on free or reduced lunch.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
So, I mean, we should really stress to parents, that, you know, hey, if you're, you know, you can't swallow your pride or you're embarrassed or whatever it is, no one can tell anybody that your kid is on free or reduced lunch. That you can't do it.
I think your team does a
So-
pretty good job with communicating the necessity and the ups and downs of that with parents that
Correct.
come with bills.
I just want to make it very well known. There's only 3 people in this district, and it's Dr. Seibel, myself, and Jade that know who anybody is free or reduced. We can't even give that to Dr. Burkhardt or Dr.
Appreciate it.
Friel.
Right.
It's very,
Correct.
if they want to sign off to maybe get an extracurricular activity paid for, the parent has to sign that I'm allowed to share that either yes or no, they receive benefits, but I can't tell anyone what status is. When they go up to the cashier, our point of sale system it's done by a code number. So none of my staff know who they
Yeah.
are. Now, sometimes you could probably pick a couple out, but we don't discuss it. We never discuss a balance with any child in this entire district. The high school kind of gets in because a lot of the kids that work, they want to put money on their account. So we have screen protectors that you have to look directly on. So what we do is we step away and just point to their balance, and then the kids can see. And then those kids we know because they work
Wow.
and put their own money
Really
away.
hard.
So this is very not shared with the kids. No one knows. It's not like back when I was in school, you got a token if you were free and reduced, and you had to, everybody knew. It's very, they've been very hunkering down on this process. And Dr. Seibel just got involved because of all COVID, and we were doing EBT debit and now Sunbucks. So we have to have somebody to help us. So that's how we got involved.
And to your point, I wasn't actually saying you were saying
No, I know,
something.
but I wanted just to make that.
I
clear.
was actually just saying, I don't feel kids should be punished. Like, I don't even think they should get dances taken away for a lunch balance. Like a computer that they broke, okay. But that's where I was going. I just feel
I just wanted to
that-
make it clear that we are we don't discuss this, and
Put it in there.
only Jade and I have records available to us, and we keep them locked.
Okay, I believe Miss Brennan was more shaming the parents.
I know, I agree, but I
Like,
just wanted to make sure.
why
from
does your
our
kid
end-
even know?
Yeah.
Yeah, shame on you parents, is what
Agreed.
she's saying.
But it's not, the high school are the only little tricky ones. They want to know their balance because they
Right.
put their own money on. So that's it.
Okay.
Ms. Goss, while you're at the microphone, could I ask a question? So you said that did you, Sunday or Monday night, that you
Monday
send
night,
out
7 o'clock.
notifications to let everyone know kind of what your balance is? And is there any kind of a blurb maybe at the bottom of that that sort of mentions free and reduced lunches, or even, you know, maybe some
A
kind
link
of
to
in
apply.
conjunction with
It's
just like
a state formulated out of our system. Primero Edge is what we use, and the state gives it to us for free. The letters are just standard. We just push a button. We have no access, as in the
Okay.
past, to change these letters or
Oh, okay.
change anything. It's just an automated.
I was just thinking
Yeah.
something that goes along with, hey, you're past due, but oh, by the way, here's a program if you qualify for that
Well, we
might
do
help
a
you
lot of
out.
that on our social media. Hey,
Okay.
your not grievance time, your carryover time, you get 30 days for the next school year for your status. Don't forget to fill out your application. When I go to PTA meetings, I make sure it's in their notes as well.
I mean, just to kind of, to help push that program, or even, you know, for a family of 4, this is what the income cutoff is.
Well,
Again,
we are
some
advised
people-
not to do the income, even though it's publicly out there for the public, for schools not to, because we have to take the application at face value, and they just advise us not to put that out there.
Okay,
So,
understand.
anything else?
I completely understand. Well, I did want to highlight two other things. One positive, we've been talking about a past due balance in the food service arena. But what Dr. Downs mentioned, all of the work that goes into reducing this past due balance. So we're not seeing, we see a past due balance that's still due. We don't see how much difference you all and the other people made, by reaching out to people, talking, encouraging them, maybe some carrot and stick approaches. So, there might be large balances that maybe were past due at one time that are now paid.
And that's why I like to put on the board report by building the negative balances each month.
And while we've talked a lot about past due balances in food service arena, what you did bring up, Dr. Downs, is the past due balance associated with IT damages, which it's been a few months, I think, since I've looked at that in the board report. In Mr. Momert's board report, but around the April timeframe, I think it was about $140,000 that the district is owed in IT-related damages.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify, we do not hold dances for lunch balances. When I said obligations, I'm talking laptops, I'm talking textbooks they never turn back in, a football uniform that obviously costs hundreds of dollars, so they owe that obligation still. They got to turn their helmet, shoulder pads, everything back in, jersey, all those things. So our secretaries know and our student council knows that we aren't saying to a kid, hey, you couldn't buy lunch, you can't go to the dance. We're talking obligations at the high school level. It could be a
That's
laptop.
stuff they're
in the middle
responsible
school.
for.
Yes.
Those
You know,
students have to
There is
return those
some
uniforms and
personal
laptops, right?
responsibility because the kid was in possession of the
Mhm.
laptop,
Right.
the textbook, or the art supplies, or the football uniform. Those are the type of obligations that we say, hey, you owe $700 on this, and it's been a balance for years. You need to show us some good faith that you're trying to at least pay it. Because if you can't pay that, we understand that, but you can buy a $60 or $70 prom ticket. It doesn't quite make sense sometimes. The conversation is, I understand if you're financially strapped, but you can put out money for a prom ticket, but you can't put out $40 or $60 on a obligation you owed for a textbook or something like that. So that's the difficult conversations we have with parents. We send the message out to parents and let them know ahead of time. We send that out through, in the past, it was through our robocall to say, hey, your child still owes an obligation for a computer, a textbook, or something like that.
So interesting thought, Dr. Downs. If we were to apply a policy that said all monies produced for anything purchased within the district are first applied to your negative balances with the district, we wouldn't be prohibiting them from going to prom. If they produced that $60, it would go to pay off their debt. They could then purchase the ticket. We wouldn't be prohibiting them from attending, would we?
I guess not the way you stated it. I don't know. But if they gave me money for a prom ticket, I don't know if I could say, I'm going to keep that money for a textbook you owed. You know what I mean?
They have a negative debt. Any monies received by the district will be applied to negative debt prior to purchasing any items within the district.
I could look into that. I'm not entirely sure that would fly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not even sure we're able to
Yeah.
assess penalties as you described. I think you'll have to check the school code because there's
Okay.
very strict
Yeah.
regulations, what we can and can't do.
Right.
And what limited exposure I've had to going to the magistrate to file claims, magistrate's going to ask you a question, well, how'd you come up with this? It can't be arbitrary, it can't be capricious, and do you even have the ability to do that? So, I agree.
Yeah.
Dr. Dalton's the one to at least check into that, because
Okay.
I have no idea if that's even permissible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Downs. Let's see, that was all born out of 12F2, the Business Administrator Report. So we have comments from other administrators. I'm actually grateful that we have that clumped together. So do any other administrators want to take the mic and address any reports? Yep. Oh, you got to take the mic on this one. I want that sent.
I do want to congratulate Wes. Obviously, I'm going to miss him in the high school. But the great thing is I still get to work with him now. in a different role, but now, Jeff and I had a phenomenal relationship for the past 7 years. We worked very well together at the secondary level. So very excited that Wes is going to that position and very excited that I still get to work with Jeff. So congratulations to him too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, so that takes us to Southwestern Education Association, Mr. Lawhead. Nothing? Okay, anyone have correspondence? Yes, Ms. Weaver.
I just wanted, after our last meeting, we got the opportunity graciously by Mr. Osborne to tour the high school renovation as a large group for those of us that were at the meeting and able to go. And it was really quite neat. I did not attend the high school, so I don't have some of the love loss that I think many will have, that their building is changing so greatly. But they are moving and grooving over there, and it was a balance between, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and oh my gosh, how are you going to open in a month and a half? And I have faith that it will be what our students need to start the year off when it needs to be ready. And I also have just the brightest hope that this high school renovation becomes exactly what everybody wants it to be, which is a beacon for our community as far as the quality of the build. Everything I've seen so far was truly very impressive. There were major hurdles to overcome that weren't seen, and they have tackled one after the other, like the champs that the builders are, and that Nate has just guided them this far, and I know that we will get it done. So for those who have driven past and wondered, like I have, how in the heavens are we opening in a month and a half? They'll be ready. And I have faith in that. And then when it's done, I can't wait for the community to do a walkthrough, just like we did with this build out here. So thank you again, Nate, as always, for your time, for staying late with us after that meeting, and for showing us exactly what you've been telling us, which is that it is working, it is happening, and we are on course right now, which is just really exciting to hear. So thank you, just a thank you to Nate and his team.
Agreed. With that, we go on to other matters for board consideration and or action. I asked for 15A to be added, which is long-term board goals development. So this item, the time has come for a superintendent review to be completed. And in doing the evaluation, the superintendent always presents goals annually that are presented to the board. And in the case of this year, more than half the board has switched since those goals were presented. So it's particularly challenging to do an appropriate evaluation of your superintendent when half of us weren't here for those initial goals. Now, we did get those delivered, but in doing proper board activity, the board is charged with developing policy and directing the superintendent towards those goals and policies as the board sees fit. That's the main role of your board. So I find it's a failing to, in the past, not have delivered board goals to the superintendent. I think that's only fair and appropriate if we're going to rate our superintendent to be very clear and transparent on what the board wants to accomplish. So to that end, I've asked that all the board members submit any board goals or desires for discussion at our next meeting to deliver the superintendent so that he has very clear direction, as opposed to getting individual direction from each board member that I have no doubt is probably very difficult to juggle and adjudicate. So with that being said, I'm just making it public here that I've asked each board member to bring forward any goals or wishes that they have to see in the next year for a board discussion on what our board as a whole wants to develop as goals for the superintendent moving forward annually. So that'll occur at the next meeting. So with that, other business and or reports, does anyone have anything else they want to discuss? Yes, Mr. Beard.
I had an item that I would like to bring up, mostly just to put it on the table so we can maybe start thinking about the best way for the district to respond. This is a presidential election year. We all know that. The campaigns are in, kind of full campaign mode now. And so my question, to Dr. Friel and Dr. Burkhart is, how have we managed presidential elections in the past? And how do we think is the best way to do that now? I mean, it's a topic that is on many people's minds, and it will be on everyone's mind by the time we get to November. So we can't hide from it. We can't pretend it isn't there. But my thought, and this is just a thought on my part, that maybe we should have some general guidance from the administration to all the school employees, some general guidance about, do's and don'ts, how maybe to respond to some common situations you might face, or, from my own experience as a federal employee, the Hatch Act, provides a lot of restrictions on things that federal employees can and can't do. The Hatch Act does not apply to school employees, but in a similar manner. My thinking was, some sort of guidance maybe that would go out across the whole, and maybe not just school employees, but even the same thing go to parents. But something so that we can kind of manage this topic. Obviously, we know that conversations are going to happen in hallways and classrooms and parking lots, so it's something that is going to occur, but maybe it would be beneficial if we developed some sort of generalized, guidance or guardrails, so that we can prevent any circumstances where, the activity on school grounds becomes too political.
So Mr. Beard brought that to me, and I thought this was an excellent consideration. It will come as no surprise that, I feel like as administrators and faculty and staff, we shouldn't be forwarding any kind of politics in our schools. So just sending out a generalized directive to all our employees stating, you should not be stump speeching for either side during school in any way. Your students should in the best case scenario, students shouldn't know where you stand politically. That's the best place to be. So putting that out very clearly to our staff, I think is a good reminder, especially as Mr. Beard cites it, during a charged election year. That's very much a necessity, is to make sure we're not delivering that in any way. So that's very clear, because again, I don't think this board needs to remind administration we wouldn't want our faculty engaging those activities. It's just not the place. And historically, I'm sad to say, my time on the board very early on, I remember it very clearly. We had a morning announcement where they invited students in the morning announcements to attend a political campaign in Harrisburg. And I felt that was way out of line. Those kind of activities shouldn't be engaged in our announcements or by our teachers. Let kids make up their own minds. Now, that being said, maybe administration should have a generalized speech. I'm sure you guys have, as far as what happens when a student comes up and wants to discuss it. I have no doubt you guys have plans in place, but you can just reiterate them in this charged election year. That'd be warranted, I think.
Matt, if I would be able to add that this is not just to provide guidance to help keep political arguments out of the school, but it's also for the protection of the staff, that you don't want a student to make a baseless accusation. So I just think it'd be better for everyone if we have some kind of guidelines.
Yep. So if I understand correctly, it's really just some communication of reminders of guidelines the do's
Right.
and don'ts of discussing charged political or controversial events. We do have a board policy on the discussion of current events and current topics. It's always good to just be reminded that we have that policy in place that we should look at and make sure that we can use it and apply it to what the classroom setting looks like.
And then you also have, on the flip side, you have policy 321 is a staff employee policy about political activities. So
So I do think we have policy in place, but it's a reminder, perhaps communication reminder about those things as we move into a potentially charged election year.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you're not preventing teachers from teaching in their classrooms, though. I mean, some
Correct.
of these things are gonna happen naturally as part of the curriculum.
Like Dr.
absolutely.
Dawkins says, we have policy in place. It's just a matter of reminding people, we have a policy, let's make sure we adhere to it.
yeah, there's 3 exceptions in that policy: discussion of and study of politics and political issues when applicable to the curriculum and appropriate to classroom studies, and then student elections and other types of, there's some exceptions, so.
Okay, any other business? I have one, I'm at a loss, so last year, this time we did a curriculum review. I don't know why we haven't done that. I guess I'll just ask that question of Dr. Phil here, so.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cromer, our Director of Curriculum
Yep,
Instruction and
up to you.
Assessment.
Yes, last year around, it was actually the end of June when we had that curriculum cycle review. This past year, in collaboration with Dr. Frio, we changed our curriculum cycle to from a 3-year to a 5-year cycle. The curriculum that has been worked on this past year, it's all under revision. We don't have new curriculum that's to be approved for this coming school year. We're still working on what was approved from last year. So moving into next year, we will have another round of art, music. Off the top of my head, I can't think. No, that one was on there. Art, music, and science. No, sorry, wrong year. So we have 5 years. So there's 5 years. I'm trying to remember who's in 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, 3 is business, math, and science. Those are going to be the 3 for this coming year that we'll have a program committee meeting in that June timeframe.
So recently I was approached by an employee who stated that basically counselors are having a hard time placing students in electives because the elective choices are narrowed or there aren't places to put more electives. So to that end, I'd like to see us maybe provide, if the board could get a listing of what electives are provided to students to take and what they want to take and what they wind up getting, and maybe the size of those classes to do a review of the classes we're using for electives and whether they're being, filled appropriately.
Yes, actually, ironically, Dr. Downs and I had a conversation about this morning.
Okay.
And not in detail, I would certainly not be able to present anything right
Okay.
now. But we did have this conversation this morning.
Anticipating it, I love it.
Well, it wasn't because we thought you were going to bring it up,
Okay.
but it was my check-in with him on
Okay.
just sort of questions or concerns that are coming up at the high school level. And
Yeah.
that was one of a couple other, we talked about a couple other things, but we did talk a little bit about that. And so.
Yeah, and so when that came up on my radar, I think the best approach for the board side of it is to get a sense of how many electives we provide our students, what electives students request, what electives students receive, and then the sizes of those electives to do a review of what electives we have and what we should keep and maybe what we should pare back, especially as we get fuller.
Yes, based on what I was gathering. And I think Dr. Friel was a part of an earlier conversation, and I don't know if I want to turn to Dr. Downs if he has anything to share, but I feel that we could definitely bring all that stuff together.
Yeah.
Because some of that is high school scheduling side as opposed to the curricular writing process side of that.
It's a
So,
complicated component, and we can certainly give to you what you're asking, but it's deeper than that. It's staffing, it's enrollment, class size issues, space issues, capping requirements, scheduling process. I mean, there are multiple layers to what you're asking. From the curriculum side, it's very easy for us to produce. Here are the options for electives. Here are when kids can select.
And that's why I don't want to,
Yep.
I don't want the full barrel, because that's you guys, you're the professionals. So what I want is how many kids in each elective, what they requested, what they got. That's really
we
all
c-
I'm asking
Yeah,
for.
we could easily get you some data on that. I
And,
think.
and along that line, I've made no bones. There's one elective particularly that I'm going to present that we shouldn't have. So I think it's better to start from what electives we have generally across the board.
Yep.
So
I'll talk to Dr. Friel. We'll work as a team on.
I appreciate it.
Just can't get me out of the curriculum world, I think, Dr. Cromer. Is that essentially what it is?
I'm never trying to do that.
Dr. Cromer, before you depart, would it be possible, since it sounds like the different curriculums are on different schedules, you know, for review and rewrites, would you be able to give us just kind of a simplistic, not now, but, you know, like a matrix that kind of has, hey, here's the curricula, and this is when it was last updated or when it's due to be
Like a
reviewed and
schedule.
updated again?
I actually have a document that I can share with you. I can send that out tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be
Pretty
very
self-explanatory. I'm actually also working on our website to make that, how do I want to say, just a little more accessible and readable and for people to go on. And those are the type of documents that I want to put on the public facing. We're working on that so you all and the community will be able to see what that cycle looks like. So yes, I can send that tomorrow.
That'd be helpful. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cromer. With that, unless there's any other business, we'll go to visitors. Anyone? Visitors, we have Mr. Carr said to be announced at the end. Do you wish to speak, sir? This is the end.
Stephen Carr, Nam Township. In regards to what Mr. Beard said regarding the election, have we came to agreement on like using our buildings at all with for a polling place or anything? And I just want to thank you all for spending your time on especially Matt with the personnel and the teachers, because I know around the country there's a teacher shortage, as I had mentioned, and teachers have been burned out. That was like 90% on a survey for the Department of Education, that they need help with support in mental health and stuff like that. So I thank you for your time on that. And that's all I had.
Okay. At this point, open to anyone else? All right, seeing none, the only response I would say is I appreciate the reminder on the using this as election site. We did initialize that conversation. Dr. Field, do you know if there's any follow-up to that at this point?
I do not know, actually. Sorry.
Okay. Just,
The last that I know of that it was left at is that we're waiting from some kind of confirmation on Julie Wheeler told us that she would get back to us on how many places she had and what her needs were.
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody's been in contact with Miss Wheeler, but I could probably contact her tomorrow and see if she can send us her needs. She might be fine, and our area has enough churches that are willing to help out. She might not need our school. I know when that request went out.
let's
there was
have
a
it,
lot of-
let's have admin do that. I think it's more direct instead of middleman,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, we can certainly do that.
I appreciate that.
I think the other thing to remember is that we've already set our calendar and approved it. So if we were to make a change for the first week of November, I mean, that needs to happen soon.
Right, except we did indicate to them they could use our facility, and to your point, sooner rather than later, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Lady, adjourned.